We're back, we're live. I'm Jay Fidell, having a great time here on ThinkTech. And it's Thursday, so we have our show, which we call Aloha United We Stand, which is a takeoff on Aloha United Way.
Awesome.
Which sends us guests from its various charities that it supports. And we are learning so much. This is like a 27-point course.
Awesome.
Every week on Thursdays at noon. So anyway, today our special guest is Major John Chamness. He's the divisional leader and divisional commander of the Salvation Army, Hawaiian and Pacific Islands Division in Manoa.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Great to see you here. Great to have you here. We, as I said, we learn so much. We learn about the social safety net. We learn through you. We learn about the problems in the community. And we are always impressed with how hard these charities, your charities, work to try to correct our problems.
Yeah, there's a lot of great nonprofits here in Hawaii, and we're just one of several that really do a great job of helping others.
So I want to define you as opposed to the others, and I'll tell you as I did before, that my wife was raised in the Salvation Army, so I know a little about it. I mean, by hearsay, directly from her. She was raised in it in Kauai, and then when she moved here, she was still active in the Salvation Army, and she has very good feelings even till today.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and I do too, through her.
Yeah.
You guys you did a great job in a plantation community in the town of Koloa.
Yep.
Kauai is where she grew up. But you know, I just came from a meeting with the Boy Scouts, okay? And my buddy is trying to, he will, and for sure, reinvigorate the entrepreneurial science STEM programs in the Boy Scouts. Yeah. And we talked about how the Boy Scouts is a very old charitable organization, has a lot of graduates out there, and it needs to be reinvigorated from time to time. All charities that have been around for 100 years plus need to take a look and reinvigorate and see how the community has changed, make sure that they're following the arc in the community, whatever. And you are. I looked at your, what is it, a press release? Yeah. Pathway of Hope press release. Right. And I think you are too. People see you at Christmas with a kettle and a bell in front of Macy's, you know, calling for spare change, and you're a long way from that. So why don't you give us a 100-year summary in a few minutes, okay, John?
Thanks, Jake. Great opportunity to just try to describe an organization that's 150 years old in a few minutes. We've been in Hawaii for 121 years. Since 1894, we were first invited to Hawaii by Central Union Church, and back then it was to really deal with the immigrant population, much like today. And we would help to work with the immigrant populations to make that transition from wherever they came from to Hawaii. But like many, I didn't know a lot about the Salvation Army. When I was about 23 years old, I was in Seattle, and my knowledge of the Salvation Army was Christmas kettles and thrift stores. I can remember going down to the Salvation Army thrift store in Seattle with my dad on Saturdays. He loved to walk through and look for little knickknacks and things like that. So that was my limited understanding. But let me tell you, Jay, that really is just the thumbnail of really what the Salvation Army does. Today we're in 127 countries around the world. The Salvation Army was started in London, England by William Booth, who was a Methodist pastor who really felt that the church needed to be doing more than just gathering together on Sunday for church. He really felt that the church should be out in the streets helping the poor and the disadvantaged. And that's really where the Salvation Army got its start, where the legend is that William Booth and his son Bramwell were walking through the East End of London, and they noticed, or William Booth noticed, that men were living underneath the London Bridge. And he said, you know, Bramwell, why is this happening? Why is this occurring? And then he said to Bramwell, do something about this. This is unacceptable. We cannot walk by people living underneath bridges, people living on the streets, and not do something. And so that sounds much like our situation today in Kakako and Kapalama Canal and other places around our community. So the Salvation Army here in Hawaii, for example, we do everything from youth programs. We have a camp on the North Shore where kids who typically wouldn't have the opportunity to go to camp get to spend 1 week at camp doing arts and crafts, and they get to go to chapels and sing songs and go to campfires and make s'mores, all those great things that, you know, other kids just happen, but these kids would never get that chance. We have drug and alcohol treatment programs where...
Let's talk about your programs in a little bit. I just want to define the organization. So is there a religious side to the Salvation Army? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. William Booth, as I stated, was a Methodist preacher, and he really established the Salvation Army in Christian principles. And the Salvation Army has always had a church as a part of our work. So here on Oahu, we have 4 churches. Throughout Hawaii, we have 12 churches on each of the neighbor islands.
It's a Salvation Army Church.
Yeah, we call them core, which is a really old word. It goes to this metaphor, a military metaphor that the Salvation Army uses, so that's why we wear uniforms. I'm an ordained pastor in the Salvation Army, and my wife is also an ordained pastor. We work as a team, but really the basis for all the things that we do are based on Christian principles, Christian ideals.
You mentioned Methodist was the original.
Correct.
That's where William Booth came from.
Right.
And so it's still Methodist?
No, it's actually Salvation Army. That would be the denomination today, Salvation Army. We would be very similar to the United Methodist, to the Nazarene Church, to a number of other churches out there in terms of our doctrines and beliefs. So.
And you must be growing in what did you say, 27 countries?
127 countries.
Pardon me, I skipped 100 countries in there. So you must be growing. I mean, is it fair to say that the Salvation Army is a growth organization and that you're growing, by some significant amount every year?
Yeah, any organization that doesn't continue to reevaluate itself, to continue to look at what it's doing and make sure that it's on the cutting edge of things, will eventually die. And an organization that's as old as us, 150 years this year, that's what we're celebrating. You know, if you don't continue to look at what's happening in a community to make sure you're on the cutting edge of meeting whatever need there is today, you know, you'll eventually grow old and go out to pasture. And we can't afford to do that. We have too many important needs here in our community that the Salvation Army is uniquely equipped to really deal with.
Let's talk about the military metaphor.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I was wrong to say 100 years when it's really 150. And that places us, oh, gee whiz, somewhere just around the Civil War.
1865.
Yeah, just around the Civil War. And life was different then. The military metaphor probably had a different way of, appealing to people, but you've kept it.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about, can you tell me whether it's part of the secret sauce that has made you successful over these years and the growth you've had internationally, or whether it is something that you think will morph into a non-military metaphor over time. But right now we have a military metaphor.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in knowing the role of that metaphor in the growth of the church.
I think there are a lot of people that have different opinions within the Army about the uniform. Is it something that sometimes separates us from others? But my experience has been that, if I'm in LA walking down Skid Row in LA, most of the people that are living on Skid Row will identify with the uniform because they've been to one of our soup kitchens or whatever. And so there's a trust. They know that when they see the Salvation Army uniform, it's an organization that really puts our best foot forward in helping others. If I walk into the governor's office, he will recognize this uniform. And even though it's kind of old-fashioned, he will recognize that this represents an organization that he can trust, that he can put his faith in, that we will do what we say we will do. So, there's certainly this idea that, gosh, the uniform maybe needs to be updated a little bit. But at the same time, I know, like our national commander can walk into the president's office, and when the president, whichever president that might be, sees this uniform, he identifies with it. But at the same time, when at the airport, sometimes I get asked to carry bags, and sometimes I get asked to drive the plane. So neither of which you want me to do.
I'm laughing because one time I asked a Navy chaplain if he would carry my bags.
Yeah. It happens all the time, and it's just a part of the job. We just salute and say, sure, I'll carry your bags.
Part of the
and then
job.
I hope I get a tip, but that doesn't always happen.
Well, a contribution, hey.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I see that. I see that. If you were walking down Skid Row, you would be easily definable,
Yeah.
and people would trust you, and they would say that you were committed enough to wear the uniform and committed enough to be, I don't know if soldier of God is an appropriate term for
Absolutely.
the Salvation Army, but
Absolutely.
you know, you would be treated as someone who is willing to show your stripes, so to speak.
Yeah, so this uniform, I think it also is a uniform that it's okay to get dirty in. So 9/11 happened a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We were the first on the scene to arrive right there at Ground Zero. We were the last to leave. But our folks were right there at Ground Zero, washing the feet of the firefighters and the policemen and the first responders that were down on site. We ran the morgue right there at 9/11. We were right there down at the nitty-gritty. Go down to Chinatown on Sunday nights. You'll find a group of Salvation Army people walking through the streets of Chinatown with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich is simply the introduction. It's a way to get to know people. But we're in our uniforms. We're down there doing the work that God has called us to do. It's a life of sacrifice. It's a life of separating ourselves from things of this world to really commit to doing the right thing to help people.
And it's a statement.
Yeah.
It's a 20, well, I wouldn't say 24-hour statement, but when you take your wife out, I don't know if you're married, but if you take your wife out to a dinner, would you wear the uniform?
You know, if it's an event that we're invited to, a social event, then certainly. If it's just a private dinner with Lonnie and myself, it probably just go in our Aloha shirts. And
Fair enough. So what is the secret sauce, though, of the Salvation Army? I mean, you've got to be, we got to admire you for being around this long and for having, you know, a robust kind of view of the world and a view of the social structure in our country, in the world, I should say. But what is the secret sauce that keeps the organization going and growing?
You know, Mr. Drucker, Peter Drucker once said about the Salvation Army, he says, it's the best run organization because we've stuck to our mission statement for 150 years. And that mission statement is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination. And so for those that join the Army, it's a life of sacrifice. It's a life of commitment to that ideal, to that mission, that our lives are really called to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's the secret sauce, is that it's not about a paycheck. It's not about trying to, for me to get ahead in life, to maybe gain more wealth or more resources, because really we have nothing. As Salvation Army officers, the house that I live in is a house owned by the Salvation Army. The car that I drive is a car that's owned by the Salvation Army. I have the clothes on my back. I have some books. I have a radio. My wife has several guitars, and that's the life that we've chosen to live.
You're a minister.
This life of living for others. And I tell you, Jay, I did not see myself here 30 years ago. I owned my own seafood market in Seattle. I was doing quite well, getting write-ups in New York Times and
Pike's Market.
Well, I was actually up on Capitol Hill.
Okay.
And I had a really great, successful seafood market. And I really felt like God was calling me to something bigger. And when I committed my life to doing what I am today, I've been blown away. Join the Army and see the world. And that's been the privilege of me, to go to many different places, to wear this uniform, to represent the Salvation Army and the great work that we do.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. I couldn't think of a better time.
Great.
This is John Chamness. He's a major. He's divisional leader, divisional commander of the Hawaii and Pacific Islands Division of the Salvation Army. We're learning about the Salvation Army here on Aloha United We Stand. We'll be right back after a minute, and we'll talk some more about their programs.
Aloha, my name is PJ, and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports, and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii, I bring in guests from UH, I bring in guests from the community, I bring in big names, I bring in small names, I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show Golf Tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
We're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell here on ThinkTech. Aloha United, we stand with Major John Chamness of the Salvation Army. You know, to take the question further about the military metaphor, does that also indicate that within the Salvation Army there is a special way of organization, a special way of arranging things and making, motivating people and so forth?
Absolutely. From the very top of the organization to the bottom of the organization, it's really wrapped around that military metaphor. So we have our international leader is a general, and we only have one general. So the structure in some respects would be like the Catholic Church, where they have one pope, we have one general, and that general is elected by our bishops. And in Salvation Army terminology, it would be our commissioners.
Excuse me.
And going all the way, down to the local level, here, I would be like the local bishop for Hawaii. I oversee our core, our churches. I have officers, and my officers are the pastors that oversee those congregations and social service programs. And our core, if you become a member of that core, you're a soldier in that core. And we sign an article of war, and that basically states that I'm going to be a person who is going to live my life separate from the world and really try to fulfill my calling in the Salvation Army in this way, as a soldier of the Salvation Army.
Well, that leads to the question of what kind of careers are available. So are you including volunteers, or this is the actual paid staff?
So we have both volunteers and paid staff. For instance, we're the largest provider of addiction services here in Hawaii. We have 3 addiction treatment programs where we serve about 2,300 to 2,700 men and women every year. The people that run those programs would primarily be paid staff, people that aren't necessarily members of our churches. Some are and some aren't. But they
don't have to be. You're not out to proselytize them.
No.
You offer that.
We're an equal opportunity employer, as they say. And we employ, the best people that we can for the programs that we serve. And so whether you're working at one of our addiction programs or one of our thrift stores or at our new beautiful Croc Center out in Kapolei, that huge community center that provides a wide array of opportunities, we're an equal opportunity employer. So the people that work there wouldn't necessarily have to be members or soldiers of the Salvation Army.
So if I'm Catholic, doesn't matter to you?
Not at all.
If I'm Jewish, less.
Doesn't matter. we hired the right people for the right job.
Okay, how many people have you got in the Army, so to speak, in Hawaii?
So we have a little over 700 employees division-wide. And my responsibility, our scope of responsibility, also includes all of Micronesia, Guam, and Saipan. So we have 28 churches from here to Saipan. We have a number of addiction programs here. In Guam, we have another addiction program. So 700 employees, and I think about 70 officers division-wide as well.
This is a big job. What kind of a career is it for you? I mean, will you be a major, or will you be a colonel at some point? Do you have a chance of being the general?
Anybody has the opportunity to be the general. I've not desired that career path. And really, we don't even necessarily call what we do a career. It's our ministry, it's our calling. And so in the Salvation Army, when you go to seminary, or when you start off as a soldier, as a member of a church. And then if you decide that God is calling you to ministry full-time, you would be a cadet. You'd go to our training college, following that military metaphor. When you complete that 2 years of intense training, you would then become a lieutenant. And for the first 5 years of your officership, you're a lieutenant. And once you complete your continuing studies, then you become a captain. And you're then a captain for 10 years. And once you reach 15 years of an officer, you become a major. So it's really more based on years of service and not necessarily position. Now, if I become a colonel, that's more position related. If I become a commissioner, that's position related. If I become the general, you only become the general if you're elected from the commissioners.
So it's a non-profit on the national level anyway. Non-profit corporation.
Non-profit religious corporation, yeah.
Okay, programs.
Yeah.
Hawaii certainly has a need for programs of the kind you're describing. A lot of agencies are involved. You know, you wonder if we're all collectively keeping up. I mean, what I mean is, although we may, even if we do not keep up, we are still making a great effort at keeping up. And the question you know, I ask you is, from your point of view, from the Army's point of view, what's it like out there that you have got to address?
Well, certainly what's happening in terms of the homeless population right now, that's something that is being addressed from the governor on down. There's lots of people looking at what needs to occur. We have some unique challenges here in Hawaii compared to the mainland. In the mainland, you know, there are cities like Salt Lake City and Phoenix, Arizona, that they've now dealt effectively with their homeless population.
I've read about that.
But, you know, the advantage they have there is that 10 miles out of town, you have relatively inexpensive land where you can develop housing and things like that. We don't have that option here in Hawaii. We have a very, you know, very expensive cost of living, very expensive housing. So it's not easy just to go out and build something someplace to house people. So certainly we need to look at that and what's the best way to deal with that. You know, 50% of the people that are on the street right now are dealing with an addiction issue or a mental health issue. So certainly the Salvation Army is well equipped to deal with the mental or the addiction issue.
You've been doing that for a long time.
Over 50 years here in Hawaii. We do it very well. We're probably the best at it in terms of really helping people to get over that addiction.
Why? Tell me. I'm really interested in, you know, you have great experience, and the experience leads you to have systems that may be more effective than other systems. So what are your systems? How are your systems, you know, more effective?
I think a big part of it is our spiritual emphasis that we have in our programs. It's not a requirement that people attend our churches if they're going through our addiction programs. It's not required that they believe what we do, but we certainly make that opportunity available to people that go through our addiction programs. And many find that they did relatively well on their own, but once they made that commitment to Christ, once they made that commitment to really identifying that higher power in their life, that it gave them a greater purpose for living. It gave them the tools that they needed to begin dealing with their addiction. You know, many people that are dealing with an addiction are dealing with trauma in their life, whether it be from being involved in one of our wars, or whether it be a sexual abuse or some other type of abuse. Many of the women that we work with have a lot of emotional issues that they're dealing with, a lot of physical issues that they're dealing with. And I think that we've just kind of around the right way of addressing the challenges that people deal with. And one of the things that we're just launching off is our Pathway of Hope initiative. And we've been doing a great job of helping people through our addiction programs. And we even follow many of them for up to 6 months once they leave our programs. And that hand-holding that we give them, or that limited hand-holding that we give them once they leave our programs, has really proven to be a significant help in the continuation of their sobriety.
So we know that people who have addiction problems have something missing in their lives, and it leads them to that. They have pain of some kind, and they need to have the drugs to deal with the pain. And it sounds to me like what you're offering, what works here, is that you're offering the structure of religion, because religion is structure. Religion gives you a friend when maybe you don't have a friend. And therefore, when they get service from you, when you help them out, you're giving them that structure. Query though, is it a long-term structure? You know, a lot of the programs we talk to, they give them material things. Well, they give them maybe, you know, therapy, social services type therapy. And this is, I guess, a form of that, except it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you're giving them religion, it could go longer into their lives. And for that reason, it has a special advantage to people who need that structure.
So I think it's really a combination of things. Certainly people need some of those material things. So what we hear most often from men and women that are graduating from one of our programs is, you know, who's gonna hire me? I have a horrible track record in terms of my employment history. So who's gonna hire me? I don't have any skills, soft skills, hard skills, anything. Many of the girls or the women that we work with, you know, they started using drugs when they were 12, 13, 14. They didn't even complete high school. So they ask, who's gonna hire me? They also ask, where am I gonna live? I can't go back to my old neighborhood. I don't have any place to go back to. Again, I don't have a good track record of housing, so nobody's going to take me in. I don't have first and last month's deposit for rent. And the third question they ask is, who's going to be my new best friend? Because if I go back to my old neighborhood, if I go back to my family, those are often the very people that participated in my addiction, that contributed towards it. So I need a job. I need a place to stay that's safe and meets the needs that I have. And I need new friends, because if I go back to those old people, they'll just drag me right back down. And so that's really what the Pathway of Hope is built around it. And I think that's what most people that are living on Kaka'ako or living in Chinatown or Waikiki or wherever that might be, they need a friend to come alongside them and help them to overcome
the
barriers.
friend is the Army.
Yeah, absolutely. The friend is our case managers who will walk with these people for a period of time once they complete addiction. Addiction treatment is really kind of like the emergency room at the hospital. When a person comes off the streets or out of prison into an addiction treatment program, that's really just the emergency room. We're just triaging them. We're just helping them to deal with the initial addiction. But there's a lot of stuff that begins to come out as we begin talking with them, as we begin helping them. Things that they've never dealt with, that they've masked with their drugs or alcohol, and things that need to be dealt with. Otherwise, they'll continue to reoccur. And so that friend, that case manager, that life coach is really that person that's going to come alongside and help them to navigate all these different things to get the resources they need to be successful.
Yeah, the real metric is recidivism.
Absolutely.
If they're going to go back and do it again, the effort in large part is wasted. But if you have a system to actually put them on a long-term track, that is so much better.
And that's what the Pathway of Hope is really all about, this new initiative that we are just launching. We're just hiring staff. We're just putting in this place, built on best practices, helped Bridgeband, which is a subsidiary of the Bain Corporation, helped us to really identify all these best practices and the best way to help somebody really get out of poverty. And getting out of poverty, sometimes we think, well, why can't somebody just pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Why can't they just go out and get a job? Why can't they just do this or that? Well, take a woman who maybe has a child or two. First, she has to get childcare before she can put those kids, before she can go out and get a job. But maybe she doesn't have a car, so to get her kids to that childcare, she's got to take a bus. And then she's got to come up with the first and last month's deposit for that childcare. So there's all these barriers that really prevent a person from even getting to first base, much less home plate.
So what does the case manager do? Make me a beneficiary of the program.
Yeah.
Pathway to Hope.
Yeah.
And I know I don't have anything. How will you get me the job? How will you get me the housing?
Yeah.
How will you get me back on the wagon, so to speak?
So the place that we've always started with in the past has been on a person's deficits. What don't you have? But the approach that we're taking is really a strength-based approach. Even a person living on the streets has skill sets that they've developed. So we begin by identifying what are your assets? What are you good at? You've learned to network in a community. You know where to get food every day of the week. So let's take that and let's somehow utilize that to help you find a job and to build a resume. Let's spend some time with you coaching you about how to best interview when you go in, how to dress. And then once you get that job, we're gonna help you keep that job, because sometimes when you're in a new job and you don't know how to do things well and a boss yells at you, sometimes you react in the wrong way. Instead of reacting in the wrong way, buck up, continue through the day,
Come
and
and
call
talk
me.
to us.
Call
Yeah.
me at the end of the day, or call me on your break, and I'll talk you through it. So these are the types of things that we would do for a person. We have employers out there, great employers, that are willing.
You get them the job.
Yeah,
you
we'll
find the job.
we'll go out and
You're
get
going
them
to
the
talk
job.
to the
Absolutely.
employer and
Yeah.
say, I have somebody for you, and I believe this will work out, so we'll take a chance, Ken.
Exactly. And we'll give them the guarantee that, we'll be there with you. We'll help this employee to reach success with you.
So does that mean that if the employer is having a problem with the employee,
Call us up.
call us up and we will talk. We will counsel with the employee.
We'll come down and we'll work with that employee and make sure that
we don't want him to lose this job.
Absolutely. The best thing we can do for a person to help them get out of poverty, to get out of homelessness, is to get them a job and get them a place to stay and give them a friend.
How do you get them a place to stay? I'm really curious.
That's the hard part.
I mean, we've seen so many programs
Yeah.
and so many conferences and so many task forces and so many coordinators, and if you opened it all to them, all of them, and said, you know, what's your program? They would all have a different program. And it's not clear which one would be the long-term sustainable program.
That's certainly the biggest challenge that we're facing here in Hawaii right now. I read someplace not too long ago that we currently have a housing stock shortage of about, was it 16,000 units of housing? So it's significant. And there's no easy solution. So, you know, certainly we have to build housing, and certainly we have to build housing that's affordable. And that's really the key right now. It's very difficult for a developer to go and build low-income housing and to make that profitable for him. A developer has to make money. I mean,
there are some, but not enough, and not enough housing.
Right.
So, any ideas about how we make a real run at this issue?
You know, I certainly think, you know, the mayor, I've met with him several times. He is passionate about this. He wants to see a great solution come forward. I think he's made a first great attempt with the Sand Island housing. And you know, I got to give him credit. He's trying to do something, and there's so many obstacles that he's encountering and others are encountering. The challenge, Jay, there is just no easy solution. This is certainly a place where government will have to step in and provide some kind of housing solution. There really is no other entity that can come forward. They have the land, and maybe we can work together to find the resources and then come up with a plan to how to do this in a way that really works best for all that are involved in this. So.
I really like that. It's a new thought. And the thought is that charitable organizations can work with government to achieve results that could not be achieved without government.
We have the expertise and the skill set to really work with people.
Right.
They have the resources to make it possible for us to work with them in a way that's effective for everybody and helpful for everybody.
But you can counsel with them, you can consult with them, you can give them ideas that maybe they don't know about because they're not in that business, and you are in that business.
The nonprofit sector, United Way, you know, we're the organizations that will come in and really help the individuals to achieve what they've wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
But we need the government and others to partner with us.
Yeah, well, that's a thread that I lock right onto that. Major John Chamness, well, he's the divisional leader and divisional commander of the Salvation Army in Hawaii. We'll take another short break. We'll be right back, and we'll talk more about his programs and how they affect not only the beneficiaries intended, but the health and wealth of the community in general. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I'm the host of Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii. We talk about why people should like science, why science is actually fun, how science is a dynamic and vital part of everyone's life, why everyone, every man, woman, and child on the planet should really know science, should love science, should be familiar with science. So it's a great show. People come on here and have interesting conversations with us. They tell us why they do what they do, why they love it, why we should love it too. I hope you'll join us every Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. And of course, you can see it anytime on YouTube. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell here on ThinkTech. On Aloha United, we stand with John Chamness, and he's the divisional commander of the Salvation Army in Hawaii. And we noticed that we have a tweet, a question, and I can't read it because I just came from the eye doctor. So maybe, John, you can read it and respond to it.
Well, this comes from Mark, and he's asking if the Salvation Army deals with the consciousness that becomes cemented in poverty and homelessness. You must believe you deserve better. So I think what Mark is asking really comes to this issue of hope. And when you work with people in poverty, when you work with people that are homeless or in the midst of their addiction, they've lost hope. And I see this all the time. I see this with individuals that we work with, that they've lost that desire to really put the effort forward because every time they've tried in the past, it's always been defeated. For instance, IHS is doing a great job of working down in Waikiki right now to identify homeless people and to help them to get the services that they need. And they identified a lady that wanted to get into treatment. And so they called our program and said, hey, I've got a great person. She needs to get into your program to go through a treatment. And so we said, great, we've got a bed for her, get her on up here. But before she came, she had to go to a couple of places to get some medications because you can't come right up to our detox program without getting some medication to help you with with your detoxing. Your body goes through some really violent things when you detox. And so she went to a couple of nonprofits and got the first 2 meds, but she had to go to Queens to get the third. And at Queens, the waiting was about 6 hours. So she sat there at Queens for 6 hours waiting to see a doctor so she could get this final medication so she could get up to our detox program. She had some people helping her throughout the day with this to pay for the different medications, to drive her from place to place.
From the Army?
Not from the Army, from another organization that's documenting homelessness here in Hawaii.
Okay.
And she said to them at the end of the day, if it hadn't been for you guys, I would have given up at the first obstacle that came up. The first time where there was a roadblock or where there was an issue, all I wanted to do was go and drink because I've lost hope. I don't have hope anymore. But because you guys were with me, you guys gave me hope. You kept encouraging me to continue on. And she would have never made it into our program. She would have never got on that road to freedom from her addiction had somebody not walked her every step of the way and driven her from Waikiki to this program, finally to Queens, and then up to our program in Nuuanu.
Maybe that's a part of the secret sauce for you, that you value that and you know how valuable it is to them. You call it Pathway to Hope, this program,
yeah.
but Query, I mean, you've been doing these things for a while, maybe decades or more. What's the difference between Pathway of Hope now as a new program and what you were doing before?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jay, because really we've been doing these things for years. This is old-time Salvation Army social work. This is what we do for people. I think the difference now is that we've quantified it into some very clear steps. And we have a very clear program now designed, built around these things that identify clearly that this is how you're gonna move from this point in your life to this point in your life. And the idea is that you're gonna take a person that's broken and beat up and feeling defeated in life, who doesn't want to continue on, who doesn't want to, doesn't know how to navigate all these different obstacles in life. And you're gonna start moving them towards this idea of hope. And you gotta keep that idea of hope out in front of them. Because otherwise, there's no purpose, there's no reason to continue on. There's no reason to try unless you give them this hope that they really can do it. And I see it all the time, Jay. It's really cool to see men and women that go through one of our programs, and for the first time in their life, they'll come and say to you, I got a job today. I got my first paycheck.
But is it that, I don't know the answer, but is it that hope is harder now? Is it that there's so many problems and obstacles to getting back into society, that hope is more difficult to achieve?
I think that often people in poverty have been beat up so many times, they've been frustrated so many times. Sometimes it's caused by themselves. I mean, let's just be honest. Sometimes people are where they're at because of their own destructive behavior. But sometimes that's not the reason. Sometimes they're there because of what's been done to them. And more often than not, especially with the women that we deal with, the children that we deal with, they're victims of the abuse that's been placed on them through their family, through friends, through an uncle, through somebody that has abused them in an unfortunate way. And they've lost all hope. They've lost hope. So
if I'm just an ordinary citizen out there and I would like to refer somebody, I believe that somebody would benefit by the Salvation Army. How do I put that person in touch with you?
Right now, we're really trying to build a program that has a really good solid matrix. And so we're starting off just with those that are coming out of our addiction programs right now. Because we really feel we need to establish some quick gains and strong outcomes. And so right now we're just dealing with the 22 to 2,700 people that come through our addiction program. But once we get some traction and some good metrics established and things, then we're going to start reaching out into the community to start dealing with some of these other issues. Right now we just need to focus right on what's in front of us. But as soon as we get that kind of squared away, we'll begin opening this up.
So the question, I suppose, is with all of that, and given the difficulties in the community, and the mission that you have as redefined perhaps to some extent by this Pathway to Hope program, why? And we know that we assume that the Aloha United Way is giving you some money, and you get a lot of money, not necessarily by kettles, but you know, by your regular donors or in the community who know about you and care about your work.
Yeah.
But what about the average person in the community who doesn't know much about you? Why should he care about what you do? How do you impact him? He's not a drug user. He has no history of abuse. But the question is, how does he see you as affecting the community that he lives in?
So that's a great question, Jay, because often, you know, somebody will comment to me, they'll say, you know, I've never known anybody that's been helped by the Salvation Army. But I know in the back of my mind that we help 1 in 10 here in our state. 117,000 people were helped by the Salvation Army last year. 117,000 people across our great state were somehow helped or reached by the Salvation Army with food, with shelter, with addiction programs, with youth programs, with after-school programs, one way or another. So when you help the Salvation Army, you're really helping your neighbor, you're helping your friend, you're helping a coworker, and you may not realize it. We often have people that will come to us that nobody else knows that they're getting help from the Salvation Army. But the way that they're able to accomplish these steps in their life is because the Salvation Army is behind them, helping them and supporting them. Sometimes that's with a bag of food. Sometimes that's through one of our counseling programs. Sometimes we're helping Dad, who just came out of prison and is in one of our addiction programs. And beautiful story a couple weeks ago.
We only have a minute left.
Oh gosh, and I'm not going to get to it. But I tell you over and over again, I see the impact that we have on this community for 121 years now, and how we've made a difference in changing people's lives, and how that's made Hawaii even better than what it already is.
I think it's clear that every organization that helps the disadvantaged helps the entire society, and you are doing that. This is Major John Chamness. He's the divisional commander of the Salvation Army in Hawaii. We've learned a lot about the Salvation Army, John. Thank you for coming down.
Thanks, Jay. It's been great.
Aloha.
Yeah, aloha.